These days, with how ubiquitous the internet is, everybody thinks they can pop off and say anything about anyone however they'd like. And you know what? You can't. Everybody takes refuge in the First Amendment. They say, oh, you know what? I've got a First Amendment right to say whatever I want, whenever I want. Well, you know what? You don't. That was demonstrated no more starkly than a couple of years ago at all the campus interviews with the whole Israeli-Gaza situation. Look at Columbia. I got interviewed a lot about Columbia because I used to teach at Columbia Law School. So they seemed to think I knew something special about Columbia. So, kids were protesting in the quad and they were putting up tents and whatever. Fine. I get it. First thing is, Columbia is not controlled by the First Amendment because it's a private institution, not a governmental entity. The First Amendment applies to the government. Now, most private colleges buy into or adopt First Amendment standards because they want to, as bastions of learning, be open and encourage dialogue. But that doesn't mean they have to. That's the first thing. The First Amendment does not apply to private businesses or institutions, which is why, for instance, let's say you're in a restaurant and there's a sign that says, no shoes, no shirt, no service. Hey, that's controlling how I look, and that's my free expression. Well, you know what? It's a private restaurant. You don't like it? Go somewhere else. They can say that. You cannot take refuge in the First Amendment. That mode of speech, kind of like burning a flag is considered speech. Not wearing shoes is not okay at a private restaurant. Fine. So that's the first thing. Second thing is the First Amendment comes with limitations anyway. It's not as broad as people seem to think it is. There's a whole list of exceptions to it. Obscenity, fighting words, defamation. The list goes on and on. So just because you have a big mouth doesn't mean you can say whatever you want. There are exceptions to what you can say. Now, the example that most people trot out in that regard is, and they ascribe this to Justice Brandeis from the Supreme Court, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. Well, first of all, that's not exactly what he said. But the second point is that conceptually, it makes the point, which is that you can't say anything just because you claim you have a First Amendment right to it. And the sad and scary and reckless thing is people who take refuge in the First Amendment don't know its contours, its limitations. They don't know anything really to speak of about the law they're invoking to protect the speech they're uttering for which they want to stay out of jail. Pretty dangerous to walk into, a gunfight with a knife. You have no idea what you're up against, yet you think it's going to all work out in the end. You know what? Study the First Amendment a little bit, watch this video, understand what the limitations are, understand whether it applies to the setting where you're speaking, and then decide what you want to say and how and when. So as it concerns Columbia's campus at the Quad, hey, listen, not only were there First Amendment concerns, but schools have codes of conduct, and you've got to buy into them as a student. I never read my school's code of conduct. I don't think Josie read her kennel's code of conduct. You just don't do it. And that's dangerous because it tells you what you can and can't do. So for instance, whereas kids thought they could, protest on the Quad at all hours and put up tents, no. The requirements were something like from 8 to 6, no tents. You do it, you're in trouble. In trouble could mean suspended or kicked out of school or arrested. And it ended up happening because kids violated the code of conduct. Hey, I'm sure there was somewhere in the code of conduct that suggested, if not outright said, you can't break into campus buildings. They did that too. That'll get you arrested. You don't have a First Amendment right to do that. So my point is that people think, I can say whatever I want, and the internet is my best friend and my tool and my support system to get my messaging out. You do that, you could get yourself sued because perhaps you're defaming someone. You're destroying someone's reputation. You're engaging in unprotected speech. Maybe it's criminal behavior or misconduct. You got to be really, really careful. What about if you're a parent and you have a kid who in the basement's clacking away on his or her keyboard, playing, keyboard warrior, defaming people, and the kid gets sued, and the kid's underage, and the kid's on your homeowner's policy, meaning you're getting named in that lawsuit most likely because you got the money. Whoops. You might want to have a talk with your minor children about what they can and can't say and should and shouldn't say online, because that can get them into trouble too. I'll tell you what I don't do. I don't post negative Yelp reviews. You know what? It's not even worth it. First of all, nothing I say is going to affect anybody. And if it does, it's probably going to affect the person who owns the restaurant. And what I don't want them to do is to get bent and sue me for defamation. And, you might say, well, they can't do that. Well, let me tell you, the minute I get served with a summons and complaint in federal court or in state court, they just did it. And defending myself because I've got a perfectly good defense, because maybe what I said is true, and a perfectly good defense to a defamation claim is the truth. But the minute I go down that road is the minute I've got to start proving things. And that means I'm in litigation. I'm defending myself. I'm paying for lawyers. I'm spending time. I'm spending money. I'd rather do without all of that for the modest upside, if any, associated with my posting a negative review of a restaurant. It's not even worth it. That is my personal choice. You'll do what you want, but I'm mindful of the defamation laws, which aren't First Amendment issues. There is a law on defamation that says you cannot lie about somebody, let's say. And if he or she, the owner that is, perceives what I said as a lie, again, I'm defending myself and I've got to prove it wasn't, and I don't want to go there. It's not worth it because I had a bad meal. So do what you want, think what you want, act as you want, proceed as you'd like, but do it from a position of thoughtfulness, not thoughtlessness and cluelessness because you don't know the law. There's a robust law on defamation, slander, libel. They're all related. I'll tell you how they're related, actually. Libel and slander are both defamation. Libel is defamation in writing, L for literature, that's how I remember it. And S is defamation verbally. S is in you're saying it, it's speech, okay? Don't libel people, don't slander people. You'll probably get sued for defamation. If you think you didn't do anything wrong, you're gonna have to prove it and that's expensive. You know what? My grandma used to always tell me you can't go wrong with your mouth shut. And that's what I've chosen to do 9 out of 10 times. It would serve you well. You usually can't go wrong.